guys, how's it going? Welcome to this installment of Mike's Vehicle Vlogs, and I want to thank you so much for joining me today. So just when I think that I'm actually running out of cars to talk about that have been in the family over the years that I've been alive, you know, I really have only talked about all of the ones that that I still have information on, that I have pictures or videos or even keys or some sort of physical memorabilia from that particular car. And I've talked about all of the ones in the family, not only the ones that I have personally owned in all the years that I have been driving, but I've talked about the minivans that we've had as a family and such. I mean, those were the big deal cars there. And pretty much throughout the years that I've been alive, my family has had, other cars also, not just the ones that I've talked about in this past vlog series. And the only real reason why I haven't talked about any other cars that we've had is because, well, I don't have anything. I really don't have anything from these vehicles. And maybe every once in a while I'm able to dig something up out of my video archives or something and show you guys the vehicles and whatnot. Or I may have just been too young to really remember any of the specifics of the vehicles. But something really weird happened last night. I actually dreamt about one of the cars, and I'm going to talk to you about that specific car in this vlog, because it's really strange. The car really does have somewhat of a special significance, I guess, to me anyway, as far as the vehicle history in my life, and I haven't really thought about this car in a long time. So for me to dream of it not necessarily dreaming of it, but to have it in one of my dreams is really weird, and it kind of sparked an interest for me today to make this vlog, kind of talk to you briefly about it. I don't really know how much I can present about this vehicle, but I'm going to try anyway and talk to you guys about it. I have to go through my videos now and try to dig up some footage. I know I have a little bit of footage, random footage, with this particular car that I could show you, just so you guys can really see what it looked like and whatnot. But I mean, I don't have much. I really don't have much to go on with this particular car. And the really weird thing about this car is, obviously I remembered the name of the car and whatnot, but I couldn't really remember what year it was. And in the dream, I remembered the year. So saying it out loud, it sounds right. It's strange. Anyway, today I'm going to talk to you about probably one of the more legendary vehicles that we've had in my family at one point. The 1986 Chevrolet Celebrity, also known as Elvis. But just like I've done in all the other past vlogs where I've talked about cars that my family have owned and I've owned and whatnot, we're going to just kind of go over the brief history, the brief rundown of the Chevrolet Celebrity, just to give you guys a little bit of the history about that specific vehicle, where it came from, and whatnot and so forth, So here it goes. So the Chevy Celebrity was one of GM's finest in the early 80s. It was you can get it as a 4-door sedan, you can get it as a 2-door coupe, and you can get it as a station wagon, back when station wagons were a thing. Celebrity shared the same platform as the Buick Century, which I know I've documented here on the vlog series at one point. We looked at a 96 Buick Century, which was pretty much a similar body style. It really hadn't changed a whole lot from, this platform at all. And then we also looked at a 1982, I think, if I'm not mistaken, and that was a backlot vehicle in one of my earlier backlot vlogs. I want to say it was an 82, and it was rough, but it ran and whatnot. It was impressive. So yeah, the celebrity, the counterparts were the Buick Century, the Oldsmobile Cutlass Sierra, which my wife had actually owned at one point in her life. That was her very first car. I don't know anything about the year or whatnot, but she knows it was a Oldsmobile Cutlass Sierra. And the Pontiac 6000. The Chevy Celebrity debuted for 1982, and it ran all the way to 1990. And right after that, in 1989, Chevy introduced the Corsica, and the Corsica was really the main replacement for the Chevy Celebrity. Ironically enough, we had a Corsica too. It was a 1992 Corsica. Again, that's one of those vehicles that I don't really have any information on. I can maybe find one or two home movies with. I know there's a video of us like washing the Corsica as kids, but that's really all that I have to go on. As far as trim levels, I think from what I was able to obtain, you were able to get a CL model, a CS, and the Eurosport. The one that we had was not a Eurosport, so I honestly want to say it may have been a CL. I don't remember there being any badging on it, at least from memory. I don't remember, but it was pretty basic. There really wasn't a whole lot to it. There weren't a whole lot of options. The Eurosport model, I guess, was very popular. It had I'm pretty sure it had the V6 variant, or maybe it did have a 4-cylinder. I don't know. But there were other body effects that the Eurosports had that the CLs and CSs didn't have. Obviously, more of a sport look. I remember some of the badging had like red outlines around the lettering and such that looked pretty cool for the time. It definitely looked like, GM 80s. Obviously, the picture that you are seeing is what the Celebrity would have looked like when it was obviously in a newer state. But this is exactly what my dad's looked like. My dad's was silver. By the time that my dad had it, though, it really wasn't all that shiny anymore. It was kind of dull. It obviously was rusting from, years, over the years and whatnot. It did have these wheel covers with the little tiny squares going all the way around them. The only real difference, I think, with this one that my dad's didn't have, if I'm not mistaken, I don't think my dad's had a passenger side view mirror on the door. I'm pretty sure it was just an empty space where the mirror would be. Like no mirror cap, no nothing. It was just, there was nothing there. So I think if I remember correctly, that was actually a thing back in the day. Cars really weren't required to have passenger side view mirrors. That was more of like an option, I suppose. But this picture is showing the mirror, and I do want to say, I could be wrong, I won't know until I try to revisit some footage. I don't think my dad's had the side view mirror. I don't think so. But everything else in this picture that you're looking at, my dad's car looked exactly the same. I was able to find a picture of the interior. Now my dad's a Celebrity, as shown in this picture. This is not my dad's, obviously, I'm sorry. But my dad's Celebrity did look very similar to the interior of this one. My dad's was blue, and obviously the dashboard had a very similar setup, almost exactly identical, where you had the very wide, speedometer that was in 5-mile-per-hour increments, topping off at 85 miles an hour, if I'm not mistaken. And you had your lever off to the left for your headlights and parking lights and whatnot. This picture really doesn't show it all too well, so I found another picture that really isn't the same color or whatnot, but it has a similar look to what you can't see. But when you go to the center of the dashboard, my dad's did have these optional gauges, if you want to say they were optional, but it had the voltmeter, had the temperature gauge in the center, and obviously the fuel gauge off to the right, and then the warning lamps in the last square. And then my dad's, as you see there, did have the climate controls with the sliding levers, the cigarette lighter. I can't remember offhand if my dad's had that switch there for a rear defroster or not. And then this one here looks like a bass. It's just an AM/FM stereo. My dad was actually able to obtain a higher end AC Delco, or Delco, whatever it is, whatever the correct name for the radio is, but it was a Delco stereo, and it had the cassette player, but it had like the very specific equalizers and whatnot. And I remember that for some reason the battery always kept the radio on the way that it was wired into the car somehow. So you didn't need a key to listen to the radio. The clock would be on all night, and my dad would always have to keep the car on the battery charger. But I guess I can get a little bit more into that when I start telling you stories and whatnot. So, but I was able to obtain this picture again. It's very hard to find stuff about this vehicle because they're just not out there anymore. So I'm just trying to find what I can to show you guys, since I don't have all of the pictures myself. If we go back to this first picture here, like I said, my dad's car did have the blue interior similar to this one here, and my dad's did have the bench seat up front, so you can fit technically 3 people up front. If I'm not mistaken, I know my dad's did have power locks, and I want to say it had power windows also, as far as the amenities go. Obviously, when my dad had the car, didn't have working air conditioning for how old it was. Like I said, I don't remember if the rear defroster worked. And I guess I don't know, that's pretty much all I could say about the amenity aspect of this vehicle. So the one that my dad had, and I was able to find a picture of it in another celebrity. My dad's vehicle was powered by the 2.5 liter 4-cylinder, called the Tech 4, the Tech 4-cylinder. It was also known as Pontiac's Iron Duke. Made a whopping 98 horsepower. Okay, so how we got our 1986 Chevrolet Celebrity was actually, if I'm not mistaken, it was 1996. And, my dad, when we were growing up, my dad always drove, I don't want to say junk cars, but my dad really didn't care what he drove. He always had a work car. My dad worked in a steel mill, so, he was always, coming home dirty or whatnot, always had his overalls on, his work clothes and whatnot. And, obviously us being the bigger family that we are, needed, more than one car, because my dad would work nights or days or whatever. And yeah, so my dad was always just, buying vehicles that were just something for him to get back and forth to work. And my dad really didn't care what it was for the most part. I'm pretty sure before we bought the Celebrity, my dad had a Chevette, and I don't remember what year it was. I just remember it was a little tiny 2-door Chevette. It was red, and it backfired, and it had transmission problems. That's all I remember. So I think by the time that the Chevette was giving out, my dad bought this 1986 Chevy Celebrity from, I want to say, maybe a fellow coworker. I do remember going to the place where this vehicle was with my dad the night that he was buying it. I don't think we were driving it home that night, but my dad paid for it. But I remember being there and looking at it. I remember it being dark outside, or it was darker. It really wasn't daylight. So, but yeah, that was the first time that I remember seeing the Celebrity. And then, like, when we got home from school the next day or something like that, it was there. My dad brought it home or whatnot. So, that was kind of the start of the Celebrity in the family. And over the years, I mean, the car has really taken, a beating just from being, my dad's work car and whatnot. It was old at the time. It was older, 1986, for the car being, a little over 10 years old, the quality in a 1986 vehicle at 10 years old really wasn't as good as, like, maybe a 10-year-old car from today's standards as far as quality. I mean, things were falling apart on there, and It's just amazing though, because despite the little problems that were accumulating with the vehicle, I mean, again, I'm gonna say it ran. It always ran, and it was actually a pretty dependable car. Um, but over the years, more of the paint was fading. As I mentioned earlier, it really didn't have all that much of a shine to it. Obviously, it being a Northeast Ohio vehicle, probably for all of its life, we, it started to rust in certain areas. Um, my dad always would either park it on the street because our one driveway was very narrow. You can only fit one car behind another, and if my dad or mom had to leave, and they would schedule parking and whatnot. So my dad either parked it on the street or he parked it off of the backyard. But when it was on the street, it would be victims. It would be a victim of like kids throwing eggs at it. Um, stuff like that. Somebody at one point backed out of our neighbor's driveway and backed into my dad's celebrity and put a huge dent in the front fender. But obviously my dad did not care that much. We just left it alone. I'm pretty sure we lost, I think, one of the wheel covers, or maybe a few of them had fallen off at one point. I know some of them were dented in. I mean, the car just took abuse. um, when we had it. So yeah. I specifically remember one night when I was 12. So this was like in 1999. My dad drove me and him and my brother out to the park one night when there was nobody out there, and he let me drive, this car around the streets of the park to kind of practice, driving and whatnot. I want to say, to be honest with you, I want to say this is the very first time that I'd actually driven a car, but I don't want to say by myself, but where I had full control of the wheel, the pedals, and whatnot. Obviously, when I was a younger kid, I may have mentioned this in other vlogs with older vehicles and whatnot, but my parents would let me sit on their lap and let me steer if we were going home, maybe just drive the block to the house and pull in the driveway type thing. But I'm pretty sure at this point, me being 12, this is the first time that I had actually driven the vehicle. And I remember my grandma, her house wasn't all that far away from the park, so my dad asked if I wanted to drive to grandma's, and I was kind of scared because that means I would have had to have taken one of the main roads to Grandma's Street, which again was like, I don't know, a minute, 2 minutes from the park, not far at all. And I did it, and I remember driving past a cop and just cruising along at the 25 mile per hour speed limit of that road, and you're nervous when you're a kid and you're 12 and you're driving past a cop. It was kind of funny, but made it to Grandma's. Pulled in the driveway, and then we drove home. So that was the first car that I actually really drove at a young age, I guess, on the street with full control, I guess I can say. My dad was a steel mill worker, and my dad was always trying to help push for a union at the specific steel mill that he wanted. So on more than one occasion, this car would be plastered with steel mill union worker stickers. And my dad tried for a couple years, to help push for that. So, one year he went all out, obviously, and every body panel had like a sticker or two of these large union stickers. And then my dad would leave some of the other ones from previous years on like the back windows and whatnot. So the car, like I said, was kind of like a walking billboard for the steel mill union, workers union or whatnot. And they never did get the union at that specific steel mill, but my dad would just plaster stickers all over it. As I mentioned earlier, my dad was able to find a higher end Delco cassette system for that car, and with the high end equalizers and whatnot. And for some reason, when it was wired into the car, it ran off of the battery all the time. You didn't have to have the key in the ignition in a certain position to run the radio. You can literally look in the window when the car was off and locked. The clock was always on. If you opened the door and you hit the power button, you had the radio come on all the time. But the clock always ran, and it became an issue when the battery would start dying all the time, every night. So my dad would always have the car sitting on the battery charger every night when he was able to park it in the driveway. And if the car was left on the street, I'm pretty sure it always needed a jump because the clock always ran the battery down. So that's another thing that I always remember about that car there. I mentioned earlier at the beginning of the video, my dad called it Elvis. And the reason why my dad called it Elvis is because his direct quote was, "It shimmies and shakes." So the car, everybody in the family knows the car as Elvis. They don't know the name of the car. They don't know what model it is. They just remember the car as Elvis. And that's part of its legacy in the family, as well as its name. And like I said, I actually dreamt about the car, and what had happened was, for some strange reason, I remember my dad in the dream was buying a Jeep, of all things. My dad would not drive a Jeep. He's not a Jeep person. But in my dream, for some reason, he bought a Jeep. And also, for some reason, this car, this Elvis, was still relevant to our lives. He still had this car. And when I found out in the dream he was buying this Jeep, I told him, I said, I want Elvis. I want to keep Elvis because that car means something to me. So in the dream, I actually was able to have Elvis and add it to my collection of cars that I have now. And then obviously when I woke up, you realize, oh, you really don't have the car. Would I like to have this car? I would. Not just any celebrity, though. I would have liked to have the one that my dad had. The real reason why it was a very, I guess, sentimental car to me is because, there were times where that car really was our sole vehicle. And, it's like, despite how beat up and how old the car was, and just how, it was not in the best condition, but that car was so dependable in a way. It really was a vehicle that was there for us when we didn't have anything else. But then there came a day when Elvis was not there. And I remember this day. I don't remember the exact day, but I remember it was either in February or March of 2001. The engine blew up. It actually blew a hole in the block. So the Iron Duke actually threw a rod. And that was pretty much the end of Elvis. I remember we all actually made cards for my dad. Because I think my dad was more bummed. Like, he was actually more sad than upset at the fact that the car just blew up. That was, like I said, that was probably one of the longest lasting cars that my dad has had. I want to say 5 or 6 years that my dad had it. For a work car, anyway. And we all were just surprised. I was actually a little sad too, because, even though, again, we all poked fun and, made fun of the the monstrosity of what this car became, or was at the time. It was just really sad that it was sad to see the car go. And I honestly don't remember the last time I saw that car in person. I don't think I saw it after it happened. I think my dad may have had it towed to the junkyard, or my dad might have had somebody come and get it. I don't know. I don't know. All I know is my dad came home from work that night and Elvis was not with him. I have no idea why I dreamt about this vehicle because I really haven't thought about this car at all in a long time. And for some reason, something in my subconscious told me about this car, and I dreamt of it, and I had it in my dream. And when I thinking about it today, throughout periods of the day, it's like, man, I really wouldn't have minded having that car. I don't know if if it would have even made it to today, but you don't even see these cars anymore. I can't remember the last time I saw a Chevy Celebrity in person. And it's kind of sad because, when my dad was driving his, you still seen, they were still out and about. Every once in a while you saw more of them, but now you don't see any of them. And it does kind of bring me down when I think about it. It makes me kind of sad. But I guess, I do miss that car. And it was just, it was very dependable when we needed it. So it's almost like, you can't really judge something on the way that it looks because, this car looked awful as it aged, and all the stickers and stuff that was put on it. You can't really judge a book by its cover. It could be a really good story inside, and that's kind of how Elvis was. So I guess that's really all that I have to say about that.
Because you'll know that they're the best. Look at the beautiful coat of paint on this. Beautiful coat of paint on this. Well, our slogan is always, you get your deal for your money. Now, see, this may have steelworker stickers on it, but we can rip those off.
Yeah, I want to add a comment here.
By the way, Steelworkers Workplace Democracy. Because we give you your deal for your money.
Can I add a comment? Yeah. This car is a piece of crap. Big egg stain right on the window.
Boy.
But of course you can get rid of that, can't you?
Wow! Part of the beautiful paint.
So I hope you guys enjoyed this vlog. Like I said, I wish I had more. At one point in time, when I was younger, I know this car had the owner's manual. I know it existed in our house, in that car. But I don't know whatever happened to it. I don't have it, unfortunately, and that's probably now, one of the ones I'd like to have. But I don't have it. I don't have anything. I have nothing physically to represent the history of this car in our family, other than the very little videos that you probably saw, and that's about it. So I'm going to wrap this vlog up. I hope you guys enjoyed listening to my story about our 1986 Chevrolet Celebrity Elvis, and I guess that's that. So if you did enjoy this vlog, do not forget to give this a thumbs up, comment, and subscribe. Also check out teespring.com/stores/Mike's Vehicle Spotlight for all of your MVS and vlog merchandise, like the Mike's Vehicle Vlogs shirt that I am wearing today. And that's all that I've got. So I will see you guys next time. I want to thank you so much again for tuning in. Take care.